My name is Emma. I am 29 years old. I was born and raised in Houston, Texas, in a poor family where life was never easy, and every penny earned had to be exchanged for sweat and constant effort. After graduating from high school, I could not continue my education, and had to enter the working life early, becoming a phone salesman at a small store in town. My life was still peaceful with simple plans, until one fateful day in May 2012. That night, the store was robbed, a seemingly small event but turned my whole life upside down. Without clear evidence, no one to stand up for me, I was accused of stealing the very items that I diligently displayed for sale every day. And then, a 5-year prison sentence pushed me to the brink of despair. Today, I want to tell this story, not to complain or blame, but to help you understand that life can sometimes be challenging and unfair. But in that journey, faith and will can still be the guiding light, helping us rise from the pain, to once again find ourselves. I am Emma, 29 years old, born and raised in Houston, Texas, a big and vibrant city, but full of darkness for families like us. My family was poor, and since I was a child, I was used to saving every penny to get by. Because my family was not well off, I dreamed of quickly earning money to help my parents while I was still in school. However, life was not easy. After graduating from high school, I did not have the conditions to go to university like many others. Instead, I worked as a phone saleswoman at a small store in town. Although the job was not outstanding, it helped me earn extra income to support my family. The store where I worked was not in a very good location, but in return, it was quite crowded because of its rich products and reasonable prices. At first, I only worked in shifts, but gradually the job became more familiar and attached. I almost considered it a part of my life. I love consulting customers, introducing each phone line that I know by heart every little detail, from functions to prices that suit each person's needs. My life just goes by like that, day by day. Although not very rich, I always feel useful, have a small contribution to the family. Then, one night in May 2012, an incident happened that completely disrupted my life. That night, as usual, after checking the shelves and locking the door, I left the store. My only thought was to quickly go home, shower and go to sleep, and open early tomorrow morning for the next working day. Little did I know that things would never be the same again. The next morning, when I returned to the store to prepare for a new working day, I discovered something was wrong. The store seemed normal, but when I stepped inside, I saw empty shelves where the most expensive phones in the store were usually kept. My heart sank when I realized that one of the store's newest products, the newly imported iPhone 4S, was missing. My mind was in turmoil, questions flashing through my mind like a storm. Why did this happen right at the store that I had always been proud of because I had never lost anything? In a panic, I quickly called the store owner to inform him of the situation. A faint hope flashed through me that there might be some mistake or some logical reason that I hadn't thought of yet. As soon as the boss arrived, I told him everything and watched him quietly check the security cameras in the hope of finding a clue to explain this unbelievable loss. We reviewed the videotapes together, hoping to find the thief. But when we replayed the tapes, we discovered that at 10 p.m. last night, the camera had suddenly turned off due to a short-term power outage. That was the exact time the theft could have happened, and there was nothing recorded. The chance of finding the culprit seemed to have completely disappeared. The boss turned to look at me, his eyes filled with suspicion, a look that made me feel like the world was collapsing under my feet. I knew he trusted me, but in a situation where there was no clear evidence, I could see that suspicion gradually replacing that trust. The boss asked me to compensate for the lost phone, a large amount of money that to me was a fortune. I had no choice but to borrow money everywhere to have enough money to pay him. I thought that was the end of the matter, but something even more terrible happened. A few days later, I was called to the police station for further investigation into the theft. Deep down, I knew I had done nothing wrong, but there was no evidence to clear my name. The police officers listened to my statement, but it was clear that they were still a little skeptical. My family was poor, without the power or money to hire a good lawyer to defend me, which only made them more suspicious of me. The day of the trial was a day I would never forget. Standing in front of everyone, I could only try to explain myself, but no one believed me, even those who knew and trusted me. In everyone's eyes, I, a poor and lonely girl, easily became a suspect in a theft case where no one knew who the culprit was. The court sentenced me to 5 years in prison for theft. When I heard the verdict, I felt like my whole world was falling apart. I could do nothing but silently accept my fate. I looked around the courtroom, at the strange eyes, the whispers about me. I had nothing left to justify myself. How could I prove my innocence when the evidence was lost and my family did not have enough power or money to demand justice? That day I walked out of the courtroom with heavy legs, a broken heart, and an uncertain future ahead. With a sentence of 5 years in prison, I entered the prison with resentment, humiliation, and pent-up pain. The life of a young girl who had never stepped out of the shadow of her poor family now fell into the abyss of society, where justice for the poor became distant. Life in prison was truly a nightmare for me. When I walked through that cold and heavy iron door, I knew that my life had officially turned in an unexpected direction, a place where every day, every hour became a harsh challenge that I never thought I would have to face. Right from the first days, I was noticed by my fellow prisoners, perhaps because I looked so weak and lost in the crowd. Their eyes were always cold and scrutinizing, as if I was a stranger in their world, where the rules were different from anywhere I'd ever known. The female prisoners here were not people who were easily overwhelmed or pitied. They quickly realized my weakness and timidity, turning me into the target of cruel bullying. Every morning, when the alarm clock rang, I had to rush out of bed quickly, otherwise I would be loudly scolded by the prison guards and forced to endure unreasonable punishments. My daily work is hard work that just hearing about it is enough to make my body feel tired, from cleaning the hallways, cleaning the toilets, to carrying heavy boxes in the warehouse. I was not allowed to protest or complain, because every time I accidentally complained, I received cold looks from the prison guards or threatening glares from other prisoners. In the early days, I thought I could not bear it. My hands were rough, my skin was swollen, my muscles ached so much that sometimes at night, I could not sleep because of the pain creeping throughout my body. On top of that, many former prisoners also came up with ways to torture me, from stealing my meager food to sneak attacks, slapped straight to the face, that I did not dare to fight back. They considered it a daily pleasure, and I gradually became invisible, a pale shadow in that closed prison. Not only the attacks or threats, but every detail of the day living here became mental torment. When eating, I had to bow my head, be silent, and patiently endure the ridicule from others. They called me derogatory names, mocking my poor background. Every time I accidentally dropped something, their laughter rang out, like knives cutting into my heart, reminding me that I had nothing left but humiliation. As for the prison guards, they were like emotionless ghosts, not caring about the injustices I had to endure. One day they dragged me out to the open ground under the scorching sun and forced me to dig holes. The sun burned my skin, sweat poured down, my back felt like it was breaking into pieces, but they didn't care. The same tasks were repeated over and over again, part of a never-ending punishment, as if all my suffering would never be enough. At night, I curled up on the hard iron bed, trying to close my eyes, so I wouldn't have to face the shame rising in my heart. But the sounds of the prison continued to echo, the laughter of the violent female prisoners, the heavy footsteps of the guards walking back and forth. I knew that, whether I wanted to or not, I would have to live under control in the darkness of the endless days. There were nights when I lay awake, my eyes staring at the dark ceiling, wondering how I could survive each day in this hell. The injustice that was not cleared, the loneliness that no one understood made my mind sink into an abyss of despair. I wondered if I could endure until the end of my sentence, if my life would have any meaning after these hellish months. Time in prison passed heavily. Every second, every minute was filled with mental and physical torment. Endurance became a habit, and I had to learn to survive amidst the pain that was not understood. No one protected me. Gradually I felt like I had turned into a different person, a tough and callous person, losing all the joy and hope of the past. I was no longer the Emma of the past, but just an anonymous shadow in the dark world of prison. The more the months in prison passed, the more I felt like I no longer had the strength to resist. Every day, every night living in torture, being despised, my body ached, my spirit was exhausted. Sometimes I wondered, could I survive to get out of here, to have the chance to prove my innocence? But the answer was always just confusion, the feeling of exhaustion every morning when I woke up, looking around and seeing only cold walls, prying eyes, mocking laughter. My life had sunk into a dark prison with no way out. Then, one fateful day, during exercise time, I accidentally met the warden Elijah. Elijah, a middle-aged man, tall and stern-faced. I had heard many rumors about Elijah, a man with absolute power in the prison, who always appeared cold and indifferent. He never cared about the circumstances of the prisoners, and those who were watched by him did not have a good ending. There were times when I was also afraid every time I had to face Elijah. But this time, the feeling of despair and the desire to be freed overcame all my fears. I gathered all my courage, approached him, quietly but firmly asked if there was any way for me to get out of here sooner. Elijah looked at me, his eyes flashed a cold light, then he smiled. That smile made me shiver, but I did not back down. I needed to find a chance for myself, no matter what the trade-off. Elijah was silent for a long time, his eyes still staring deeply into mine, as if he wanted to see through every thought. He said, in a calm but terrifying voice, that it was possible, but the price would be great. Before I could fully comprehend what he meant, Elijah continued, each word penetrating me like a cold knife. If you want freedom, just give me one night, just one night, and I will take care of everything so you can get out before the deadline. My heart suddenly tightened. Elijah's words seemed to suffocate my breath. I stood there, feeling like the world was spinning. I never thought I would make this trade. Never believed that one day I would be forced into a situation where I had to choose between humiliation and the chance to escape hell. In that moment my mind was filled with conflict. I didn't want to submit, didn't want to be humiliated by someone like Elijah, but the thought of being free, of escaping the four cold walls of this prison, of finding justice for myself, made my heart confused. All day long I tossed and turned, thinking. Finally, late at night, when there was only silence around, I decided to close my eyes and accept, hoping that this trade could bring me back to freedom. I knew that what I was about to do would never be erased, would become a wound forever engraved in my soul. But the desire to clear my name, to live again, made me push myself past my fear. That night, when everyone was asleep, I left the cell and quietly walked to Elijah's room. My hand trembled as I touched the door, and my heart felt like it was about to explode as I knocked, waiting for a response from inside. Elijah was already waiting, and when I entered, he stood up, walked towards me with a satisfied look, as if he had me in his hands. Without giving me time to think, he pulled me in, closed the door, and lifted me onto the bed. I had no choice but to hold my breath, bite my lips, and try to keep myself from crying out loud. At that moment, I only felt extreme pain, both physically and mentally. The feeling of humiliation and despair overwhelmed me, almost making me collapse. Elijah kept whispering teasing words, his laughter like a knife carving deep into my self-esteem. Every passing moment was an indescribable torment, but I could only grit my teeth, endure, swallow my tears, telling myself that this would be the last time I had to go through this nightmare. After Elijah was satisfied, he stood up, looked at me with a pitiless gaze, and simply ordered me to return to my room. I struggled to get up, each step heavy, as if my body had no strength left. The dark cell greeted me with a terrifying coldness. That night, I couldn't sleep, just lying there, silently and painfully, wondering if my choice was right, if this trade-off could help me escape hell. The next morning, Elijah kept his promise. He arranged for me to be released early. Although the feeling of freedom returned, it did not bring relief, but instead a deep pain in my heart. I knew that I had lost a part of myself in exchange for freedom, and no matter what life would bring, I could not erase this wound. But now, I had only one goal: to clear my name and regain my innocence, no matter how much more I had to pay. After my release, I did not return home immediately, but was determined to find James, an old high school classmate, and the only person I thought I could trust in this situation. From the moment I stepped out of prison, the feeling of freedom returned brought both happiness and pain, because I understood that this freedom was not yet complete. I was still the one with the stain, the one who was wrongly accused, and nothing could save my honor without someone helping me prove the truth. James and I had a pretty close time when we were in school. He was one of the few friends who understood my family situation, always willing to help me in difficult days. After graduating, James continued his education and pursued a law degree, while I had to give up my dream. Although I knew that over the years James might have had his own life, or even forgotten about me, I still had faith that if anyone would listen and understand my story, it would be James. With the little money I had saved from working before my conviction, I took the night bus to Austin, Texas, where James now lived and worked in a law office. Sitting on the long overnight bus, I looked out the window, feeling the night wind hit my face, both painful and cold. Memories of my time in prison, of humiliation and sacrifice, kept coming back to me, but my heart gradually felt lighter as I thought about the hope ahead. I arrived in Austin early in the morning, with old clothes, tired, and a heavy heart. I couldn't help but feel nervous as I walked into James' law office. The room was spacious, bright, and clean, a stark contrast to the place I had just left. I never dreamed that I would one day set foot in an office like this. But now, I stood here not as a normal customer, but as someone begging for help. When James stepped out of the office, his eyes were slightly surprised when he saw me. In his eyes, I was probably just a thin and tired image, the traces of pain still deeply engraved on my face. However, that look only revealed a little confusion for a moment. Then he quickly recognized me and smiled gently, as if everything between us had never changed. "Emma, you're here? Are you okay?" James asked, his voice mixed with surprise and worry. I stood still for a moment, my eyes stinging as I looked at him, my once close friend. James' every word seemed to soothe my heart, making me feel a bit of warmth that had long since disappeared from my life. The emotions were so overwhelming that I wanted to cry, but I held back, just nodded and tried to stay calm. I told James everything from my poor life, to my job selling phones, to the horrible days in prison I had endured after being wrongly accused. James listened intently, his eyebrows gradually furrowing. Sometimes he even gritted his teeth. I knew he was feeling angry on my behalf. When I stopped, James was silent for a long time, and then said softly, his voice low but full of determination, "Emma, you have suffered too much. I believe in you, and I will do everything in my power to help you clear your name." I looked up at him, unable to hold back my tears. It had been a long time since I had felt trusted and protected like this. James immediately got to work, reinvestigating every detail of my case. He contacted sources, checked case files, and looked for loopholes in the previous investigation. For me, each passing day was not just waiting, but a hope that gradually grew in my heart, a glimmer of light in the darkness. James was not only an old friend, but now the only hope to help me move forward. Seeing the way he worked diligently, not afraid of difficulties, I realized I was not alone. Although the road ahead is still long, full of difficulties and challenges, I no longer have to face it alone. As I left James' office that day, I walked away with a strong belief that the truth would be revealed, that justice would prevail. And no matter how long it took, no matter how many challenges, I would stand firm to reclaim my innocence with the help and determination of my dear friend from the past. September 12, 2017, was a day I will remember forever. The day James and I entered our final trial, hoping to regain the justice and innocence that I had lost over the years. The atmosphere in the courtroom was thick as everyone listened attentively. James stood in court, brave and determined. His sharp words seemed to tear apart all the prejudices that had enveloped me for so long. James had spent months searching for evidence, reviewing every small detail in my case file, from the negligence in the investigation to the unfounded statements that the police had overlooked. With solid arguments, James proved that I was innocent, that I had nothing to do with that cruel theft. When the judge declared me not guilty, the whole world lit up inside me. My legs shook, tears could not be stopped. I looked at James through tears, my heart filled with gratitude and joy. After the trial, I felt like I had been resurrected from the ruins of my life. To thank James, the first invited him to my house for a cozy, simple meal, but full of gratitude. That night at the dinner table, I looked at James, and could not help but say thank you with all the sincerity in my heart. Without you, I would never have been able to get through this darkness of life, I said, my voice trembling slightly. James just smiled. He put his hand on my shoulder. His gentle eyes seemed to say that to him, everything was worth doing. For me, James is not only an old friend, but also the person who helped me find life, faith, and courage to move on. After a while, when my life gradually stabilized, I met Noah, a man 3 years older than me, the vice president at Texas International. Noah is not only intelligent and successful, but also has a rare tolerance. We met when a friend introduced us. I didn't think I could open my heart again after all that I had been through, but Noah patiently approached me step by step and soothed my wounds. His sincerity and steadfastness made me gradually feel safe and peaceful when I was with him. Although I tried to hide my past, Noah soon realized that I had experienced something painful. One day I decided to tell him everything about the days I lived in pain and despair, about the injustice and humiliation that were deeply ingrained in my mind. I didn't want Noah to enter my life without knowing the real me, because I understood that it would be unfair to him. When I told him, Noah was silent, his eyes showing sadness and understanding. At the end of the story, he took my hand and said, "I don't care what you've been through, Emma. I love you for who you are now, for your strength and honesty." The past does not change his feelings. Noah's words touched my heart, soothing the pain that was still bleeding inside. He accepted me completely, and that became a great motivation to help me have enough courage to step into a new life. Not long after that, Noah and I decided to hold a small but cozy wedding where I officially became his wife. Standing in front of Noah on the big day, I knew that I had found the place to settle down in my life. Our married life was happy. Noah was always by my side and protected me, although he knew about my past. He never let it affect our love. To him, I was still the woman he loved and respected, the person he trusted and wanted to share the joys and sorrows in life. Although Noah loved and accepted everything, I still felt guilty. Sometimes, memories of the past come back to me, reminding me of what I have endured, of mistakes I could not control. I blame myself for allowing those things to happen, for allowing my life to spiral into pain and bitterness. Whenever I see Noah's unconditional love for me, I feel both happy and tormented. I know that he never blamed or cared about my past, but I still couldn't forgive myself. And then, I understood that life is never a blank page. The past may have left deep wounds, but it was those wounds that helped me cherish my present happiness, cherish the man who loved me unconditionally. My life has turned a new page, and I know that I have to learn to let go of the past, live fully for the present and for the future that Noah and I are building together. Life, sometimes, can be truly cruel and unfair, can push us to the brink of despair when we least expect it. But it is at those times when standing at the crossroads between pain and hope that each person must decide whether to face it or give up, to rise up or let life sweep them away forever. The lesson I realized after those dark days is that no one can save you but yourself. Sometimes we have to fight to defend what is right, to defend our innocence, even when everyone turns their back and doesn't believe us. When pushed to the depths of pain and doubt, it's understandable that we want to hide and avoid ourselves so as not to face our wounds. But then, I realized that if I let that pain control me, if I let injustice define my life, I will eventually be just a shadow of my past. The feeling of injustice and humiliation can make me lose my self-respect, but they can't take away my belief in myself unless I let it. Therefore, I want to tell those who have experienced pain, be strong and never stop fighting for your innocence. Never give up on what is right. Courage and perseverance are the most important things to help us move forward. The past is just a part of life, not everything. It may be full of darkness, full of things that hurt you, but it is also where you have grown, where you have understood your true strength, the strength to stand up no matter how many times you fall. Take that past, the pain and loss, as motivation to rise up, to start over and live fully in the present. The past cannot be changed, but the present and the future are always blank pages. If we choose to look forward and rebuild our lives, each step will become more steady, each moment of happiness will become more complete and valuable. Don't let anyone or any circumstance define you. Life is yours, and you deserve to be happy, deserve to be loved. Cherish what you have, cherish the people around you, because they are the comfort, the source of encouragement for you to overcome the pain. Never forget that true happiness comes from accepting and loving yourself. When you do that, the pain of the past will only be a part of the memory, and the present will be the best gift that you can fully enjoy.